Hello dear students, Mrs. Naziya Ustad from St. Joseph's High School welcomes you to the first part of the chapter Friction. In this video, we will learn force of friction and factors affecting friction.
How do things move in real life? Say a ball moving on a flat ground and there is no external force acting on it. Will the ball eventually come to rest? Yes, it will. Have you ever wondered why? Say you are skating on an ice rink and your friend is skating on the road. Whose movement do you think will be smoother? Definitely yours. When you hold a bottle in your hand, why doesn't it just slip through and fall? Sometimes when you are walking around in mall, do you remember seeing a caution sign to warn you about the floor being wet? What explains all this? The answer is friction. The reason why the ball eventually comes to rest is because of the force of friction. The reason why skating on ice rink is easier because the force of friction is lesser there. The bottle doesn't slip through because the force of friction between your hand and the bottle doesn't allow it to do so. If the floor is wet, the friction offered by it reduces, and there are chances that you might slip and fall. So, what is this friction we are talking about? It's quite easy to understand its concept. Friction is nothing but a force. It is the force exerted by a surface where an object moves across it. In the first case, when the ball is moving in this direction, the force of friction is acting in the opposite direction. The force of friction offered by the ice rink floor is lesser than the force of friction offered by the road. Hence, skating on the ice rink is easier and seems effortless. The bottle doesn't slip down because the surface of your hand offers a friction in the upward direction. And in the case of floor in the mall, the soapy water reduces the friction offered by the floor. We know that if we are pushing the cube in this direction, then the force of friction will act in the opposite direction. If we apply a force along the left, then the force of friction will act towards the right, and vice versa. The force of friction will always oppose the applied force. What are the factors that affect the friction? Let me give you 3 situations and then you will tell me what it depends on. The first situation is when an object with a smooth surface is moving on a surface which is very smooth. Second, in which the object has a smooth surface and the surface on which it moves is rough, or the object has a rough surface and the surface on which it moves is smooth. And in the third case, the surface of the object as well as the surface of the table is rough. In which situation do you think will the force of friction be the highest? Intuitively, you will tell me that in the third case, the force of friction will be higher than these 2 cases. And in which situation will be the force of friction will be the lowest? It will be the first case as both the surfaces are very smooth. Though there will be friction here, it will be lesser than the other 2 cases. If we just look at these 3 situations, we can say that the force of friction increases as we go towards the right. So can you tell me the first factor on which friction affects? Yes, it depends on the nature of surface on which the object moves and the nature of surface of the object. Yes, it depends on the smoothness or roughness of the 2 surfaces which are in contact with each other. If you want to find out this is true, then here is what you can do at home. Create an inclined slope on a table like this and mark a point somewhere on it. Now from this point, let a small cylindrical shaped object move down. You will see that it reaches a particular point and then stops. Next, place sandpaper right under the slope and leave the object from the same point as before. What do you notice? You will see that the distance covered by the object is lesser in the second case. And you probably know why. The surface on which the object rolled was rougher in the second case. And clearly the force of friction was more there. Why is friction caused though? It is caused due to the irregularities on the 2 surfaces in contact. What do I mean by irregularities? Now, even though the table looks smooth, if you zoom into the surface, you will see the surface irregularities. Even the surface of the object has irregularities. Though they are minor, they still exist. Now, the irregularities on the surfaces block into one another. So, whenever we have to move an object, we need to overcome the irregularities. But why is the friction higher on rough surfaces? It's because rougher the surfaces, more will be the irregularities. And if irregularities are more, then more force will be required to overcome them. So the first factor affecting the friction is the nature of surfaces. Is there any other factor you think of? Let's say there are two bricks on a table. One weighs 2 kgs and the other weighs 5 kgs. Now I apply equal force on them towards the right. Which brick do you think will go further? Remember that they are kept on the same surface and the surfaces of the brick are also same. Now applying the same amount of force, you will notice that the lighter brick covered more distance than the heavier one. What does this tell us? It tells us that the friction also depends on the force with which the two surfaces are pressed together. If the two surfaces are pressed harder, the friction will be more. Why is that? Because of second brick's greater weight, it pressed on the table with greater force. Since its surface and the table are pressed together harder, the interlocking between the irregularities is more, and this results in more friction. So mainly, there are two things on which the force of friction depends: the nature of two surfaces and the force with which the two surfaces are pressed together.
Dear children, here I would like to conclude this video. Further concepts will be learnt in the next video. Thank you.